What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Triggered Precision Machine. After a nice long hiatus from YouTube, we're back. We have some pretty interesting stuff to talk about today. The topic for today is accuracy, and this was all brought about by conversations I had with customers, stuff we commonly read on the internet. And the idea and the purpose behind today's video is just to get you guys to think outside of the box and try to put some perspective on our rifles, our expectations, and kind of what we see on target, out in the field, etc. The other cool thing about this topic is this will segue into the Spring TPM shooting challenge. I shot it myself yesterday with two different rifles, both rifles behind me, the PRS rifle and also this 7 short action ultra mag hunting rifle. So two very opposite ends of the spectrum. I'll show those results here soon and we'll start talking about what we have to talk about today. All right, guys, so before we start going down this rabbit hole, there's a couple things we need to talk about and a couple terms we need to define. We hear these terms very frequently in the precision rifle world. We hear accuracy and precision, two different things, but we want them both. So in the simplest terms possible, accuracy is being able to put that bullet exactly where you want it. On the other hand, precision is being able to group those bullets together precisely. So basically a rifle that will shoot itty bitty groups. Now, ideally what we want is a rifle that's accurate and precise. So we want that good combination of accuracy and precision. That's going to let us win our matches. That's going to let us have positive impacts on animals in the field. It's just what we strive for when we're doing all these things to produce the best rifle system possible. We go through all the effort of fine-tuning our hand loads. We go through all the effort of fine-tuning our rifle using the best components possible. So that's the ideal goal. All right, so we've defined two very important terms in the precision rifle world, precision and accuracy. We know what those are now. Now, where does this come into play in our sport, right? So what we see nowadays is it's very common to have an accuracy guarantee attached to a rifle. We see this in the box stock factory rifles all the way up to the very highest end precision rifles that are out there, like the ones I build here in the shop. Very common to see a half MOA guarantee, which roughly equates to 1/2 inch at 100 yards, or all the way up to a 1 MOA guarantee, which equates to, there again, 1 inch at 100 yards, or roughly. So the problem with these guarantees is they are assuming ideal conditions with a shooter who is capable of shooting that level of accuracy. And I'll go so far as to tell you that it takes an extreme amount of skill and effort and practice to be able to shoot very, very small groups. And when I say very small groups, I'm talking consistent groups below 1/2 inch, and it takes a very impressive rifle system to do so. We see a lot of these ultralight hunting rifles out there by these semi-custom manufacturers who claim 1/2 inch groups. And I can tell you from personal experience that a lot of you guys out there who shoot these light rifles, like we're talking the 6 to 8 pound range, 300 PRCs with carbon fiber stocks, so on and so forth, these are not easy rifles to shoot. There's a reason why we don't see 6 to 8 pound rifles running around on PRS events, because they're not as easy to shoot. They don't handle the recoil as well. They're not as stable off of the barricade or the bench or tripod or bipod rear bag, whatever you're shooting from. And they just make it difficult to shoot small groups. Is it possible? Absolutely. But it takes a lot more skill in driving the rifle to achieve groups like the ones we're talking about. So do I offer an accuracy guarantee on the rifles I build? I used to, and I stopped doing that because what I found is, generally speaking, most of my rifles exceed the accuracy expectation that I was giving to my customers, and I was telling them 1/2 minute of angle, so 1/2 inch at 100 yards. And pretty much every single rifle that I build has the potential to shoot better groups than that. Now, will it shoot better groups than that in a customer's hands or someone else's hands or even my hands? The answer is maybe. Once again, we have to look at all the factors that contribute to that kind of success. So environmental factors, our shooting position, our mental, our mindset for the day, right? Olympic shooters don't go willy-nilly into an Olympic event without preparing themselves mentally to do the best that they can. How often do casual target shooters or hunters prepping for the season actually mentally prepare themselves to go out, sit at the bench or prone out and get the best groups that they can from their rifles? Most of the time they don't. Usually they just plop down and pull the trigger to the best of their ability and expect the results that they expect, or the results that they're expecting from the accuracy guarantee on the box. So we have to prepare ourselves for success if we're going to see success. When we look at ammunition, right? Factory ammo these days is very, very good. I typically use a lot of the Hornady Precision Match and Hornady Precision Hunter to proof test the rifles that I build here in the shop, especially for the calibers that I don't have the reloading equipment for. I found that ammo is really good. It's not bad at all. It does the job of telling me if there's something wrong with the rifle that I'm sending out to a customer. And generally speaking, I can achieve some pretty respectable groups with that ammo. Could I get better groups with hand loads? Absolutely. Hand loads are the #1 way to improve the accuracy of your rifle. You can take a rifle that shoots just so-so, and you can't make it shoot fantastic with hand loads, but you can definitely improve the accuracy by fine-tuning and tailoring a load for that specific rifle. So, again, we have to look at all the mechanics of our rifle as well. When we say we're setting ourselves up for success to achieve those little tiny groups, right? Are we making sure that everything is torqued properly on our rifle? Or is the scope functional? Does the scope track accurately? Does the scope hold 0? Are the rings okay? Are the rings torqued properly? Is everything good to go, right? One very common thing that we see is muzzle brakes coming loose. You can have a self-timing muzzle brake that rattles loose after just a few shots if it's not torqued on tight enough, and that will throw your accuracy expectations out the window. You will not be able to group at all. In fact, that happened to me on my 6BR PRS rifle behind me. I had no idea. The thing's shooting tiny, tiny groups. Muzzle brake rattles loose. Next thing you know, I'm shooting 1.5-inch groups on a rifle that is capable of 1/4-inch groups. So all things to keep in mind when we're going out and we're looking to achieve that accuracy goal. All right, guys, now the next fun topic we have is statistics. So we talk about statistics a lot in the precision rifle world. It's very common to hear statistical terms like SDs, standard deviations, averages, stuff like that. These are all statistics, the stuff that we hated back in high school, and now we're using it as precision shooters as adults. So with statistics, one of the problems that we find commonly in this game is lack of a statistically significant population. So we commonly see guys who go out there and fire a couple rounds through a chronograph and get a velocity average based on that. That just doesn't work. It's not statistically significant. It doesn't show a true interpretation of what your sample of loaded ammunition is going to give you through a chronograph. So you could go out there and shoot 1 round over a chronograph, and that would give you a very, very general idea of how fast that bullet is going. To be truly statistically significant, we need to increase the sample size and shoot as many rounds as possible. Typically when I'm going out and shooting rounds through a chronograph to determine a velocity average for the purpose of developing a dope card or inputting the data into a Kestrel or some ballistic computer, I try to shoot at least 20 shots through my chronograph. That gives me a pretty accurate description or pretty accurate representation of how fast my ammunition is going in those environmental conditions, and that's important to note. So this same thing applies for shooting groups. You could go out there and you could shoot a 2-shot group, which is technically a pair, and you could measure the center to center difference for those between those 2 shots, and you could have theoretically a group size, I guess. You can shoot 3-shot groups, which I do all the time, and you could shoot 5-shot groups, 4-shot groups, anything. The higher number of shots that you are going to shoot in a group, theoretically, you're going to have a more accurate representation of the accuracy of your rifle. Now, there is an asterisk in there, and we'll talk about it at the very end after you guys see the targets that I'm holding in my hands and kind of what I determined after doing this test myself. So what the test was is I took these 2 rifles out behind me, the 6BRA, which weighs 26 pounds. It's a PRS rifle, dedicated match rifle, very little recoil, very easy to shoot, The rifle just basically sits there. It has a 6-ounce trigger, very little human input when you're pulling the trigger on a bench on this rifle, and the accuracy potential of that cartridge with my hand loads is extremely high. I commonly see groups in the 100,000 to 200,000ths of an inch range for 5 shots. Very, very accurate. The 7 SAUM, on the other hand, is a 13-pound hunting rifle. Very accurate rifle as well. Very, very tight velocity spread on the hand loads that I'm shooting with that. And it's a very capable rifle out to far distances. In fact, that rifle back there holds my personal record for the farthest shot on living game, which was a mule deer at about 960 yards. The rifle performed perfectly. So where I'm going with that, I went to the range and took both of these rifles yesterday with the intention of shooting different groups. And what I mean by different groups is groups with different numbers of shots. So both of the rifles went to the range with clean bores. The first shot, the cold clean bore shot, was set on a shot on a separate target, and then I proceeded to shoot 3-shot groups with both rifles, 5-shot groups, and finally I shot a 20-shot group with both rifles. Now I'll throw these targets up on the screen and we can talk through what I actually saw on target. Alright guys, so I shot the 6BRA first, so we'll go over that target first. Now you'll see my cold clean bore shot right there in the middle of the target on the TPM logo. That's right about where it typically is. I usually have a cold clean bore on that rifle that is slightly high and to the right. After that, I shot my first 3-shot group up at the upper left. That group measured .516. That is an extremely large group for this rifle. Now what you'll notice is right after that, I noticed that the rifle needed to be fouled a little bit. It shoots better once it has a half a dozen or so rounds through the barrel after a thorough cleaning. So my second group was another 3-shot group immediately to the right of that, and that measured .229. So now we're getting back into the range that I expect from that rifle. Right after that, I proceeded to shoot my 5-shot group, measured .592 once again. That is not necessarily the norm for that rifle. In fact, the bottom left shot there was definitely my fault. We're going to include that in the measurement though, because once again, human error is a factor and human input is a factor in group size. So we go down to our number 4, right below the 5-shot group. That is our 20-shot group. Now there's 20 shots in that group, shot at 100 yards off of a bipod and a rear bag, and that group measured .582 inches. So very similar to my 5-shot group. After that, I had some extra ammo, so I shot 2 more 3-shot groups, and you'll see those over on the left below our first 3-shot group, and that one right below group number 5 measured .3125 inches, and right below that we had another 3-shot group that measured .215. As you can see, the rifle likes to hover right around that 200,000ths range, and like I mentioned, occasionally if I do everything right, I have good conditions, I can get groups in the 100,000th range, but that's a pretty average group for this rifle. And up there at the top, we have all the data written down. So this is a 6 bench rest Ackley. I'm shooting a 28-inch barrel, shooting a 105 grain Nosler RDF. These average out at 2888 feet per second. The extreme spread on all the rounds that I shot that day, yesterday, was 11.7 feet per second with a standard deviation of 3.0. All right, guys, next up we have the 7 SAUM target. All the information for that target was right up there at the top, shooting a 160 grain Sierra tipped Match King at 2970 feet per second. The average, or I'm sorry, the extreme spread for the day was 21 feet per second, and the standard deviation was 9.2. That's about where that rifle likes to live. So our first group, I have to disclose the fact that my cold bore shot, and there was 5 Fowlers that were shot on a separate target that I did not collect from the range. But needless to say, the 7th shot out of the rifle was used in the first group you see at the top left. And that was a 3-shot group, so shots 7, 8, and 9 from the rifle were fired in that group right there that measured .313 and gave the rifle a couple of minutes to cool down because that rifle barrel is not a super heavy contour and it heats up pretty quickly, and I was also shooting suppressed. So I was getting some really bad mirage in the 42-degree ambient temperatures for the day. After it cooled off, I shot a 5-shot group over there to the right. That one measured .390. This is all very, very typical for what I usually see from that rifle. let the rifle barrel cool down just a little bit. And when I say cool down, I did not let it cool down to the ambient temperature. I just let it cool down enough to where I was comfortable shooting another 5 shots through it or so. I'm not trying to destroy my barrel by overheating it. I still have quite a few rounds left on this barrel, and I want to try to preserve it and be able to use it for a couple more years of hunting. So the 20 shot group was broken up into series of 5 shots. So I would shoot 5 rounds, allow the barrel to cool just a little bit, shoot 5 more, cool, shoot 5 more, and then I finished up with 5 after I let it cool that last time. And we see a group that's just over 1 inch. So still a sub MOA group and still very, very good accuracy. What we see is some outliers there on the left and the right, which kind of made that group one large ragged hole. But again, the group size greatly increased from firing 5 rounds. Now we'll talk about that here in a second. All right, so we looked at the targets, pretty interesting stuff. What I found was the heavy MTU contour on the 6BRA that only burns 31 or so grains of powder doesn't heat up very quickly. I could go probably shoot 20 rounds as fast as I want, and the rifle barrel still would maintain some sort of relatively decent temperature. It wouldn't be too hot to the touch, which is usually what I personally use as the threshold for getting my rifle barrel too hot. This is a competition rifle. We commonly shoot courses of fire where you're shooting 10 to 15 rounds or so in the matter of 2 minutes. So shooting 20 rounds in 5 minutes is no big deal for this rifle. On the other hand, the Remington Sendero contour on the 7 SAUM is a lot lighter contour. That cartridge is burning almost double or over double the amount of powder that the 6BRA is, and it heats up a lot faster. In fact, after 3 shots, the rifle barrel gets pretty warm. After 5 shots, it's right there at that threshold where I just don't really want to push it. After 10 shots in a row, the rifle barrel would be pretty hot, and the suppressor is going to be cooking pretty hot as well. So that's why I broke it up the way that I did. Now, that is also one of those things we have to factor in to our accuracy expectation as well. And it brings up another good point. Barrel contour and the overall makeup of the rifle will also determine or have some sort of determining factor on the accuracy potential or the precision potential that we're going to see from our rifles. So lighter barrels heat up faster, and when metal heats, it expands and does different things, and it can also change and deviate, which we will see commonly with a 0 shift as rifle barrels heat up, which I could really attribute to the left and right deviation that I saw in the 7 SAUM group. Typically it doesn't have any sort of left and right deviation, but as the barrel got hotter, I started seeing rounds that were landing to the right and to the left, mostly to the left. So the rifle barrel started deviating to the left as I shot, and it got hotter. Really interesting stuff. So after doing all this, it was a little bit eye-opening. The 6BRA, I fully expected that rifle to shoot 20 shots right around 3/8 of an inch. The group opened up to .582. I was there, I was prepared to shoot. I was in a good mental state. I didn't have a lot of coffee that morning. Had a great shooting platform built up, shooting off a rock solid bench with a MDT Skypod, fully splayed out with a nice game changer bag in the rear. Rock solid shooting position, and that's what I got. Now, when we're looking at this, I would ask you guys, what kind of accuracy would you call this? So what kind of accuracy measurement would you give to that rifle? Would you call it a 1/4 inch rifle? Would you call it a 3/8 inch rifle or a 1/2 inch rifle? And a lot of that is determined on which group size we find relevant. So if we're looking at a 3-shot group, then you could easily say that it's right around a 1/4 inch rifle. If we look towards the 5-shot group, then it's just above a 1/2 inch rifle. If we look at the 20-shot group, then once again, it's just above a 1/2 inch rifle. So that's where the discrepancies lie in giving these accuracy expectations. If we look at the 7 SAUM and we consider the 3 and the 5-shot groups, that's right around a 3/8 inch rifle. However, we bump that up to 20 shots and it's an inch rifle. So what is relevant to you? What is relevant to your type of shooting? Are you going to be out there shooting multiple rounds in a large string of fire where a 20-shot group is statistically relevant to you? Or are you a hunter where you might look at a 3-shot group? And that's kind of what I would urge you guys to think about when you're out there shooting your rifles. So typically when we're hunting, we don't shoot more than a couple rounds at an animal. You might try to take a shot at a big bull elk and maybe one shot isn't enough, so you put maybe 2 or 1 more or maybe 2 more into the animal just to make sure it's killed cleanly and ethically. So typically we're not shooting a lot more than that. I know that there's scenarios out there where you might shoot more than that, but a lot of the times these are 1-shot kills or 2 to 3 shots. So maybe that's what you should look for and use as a guideline for your accuracy in your rifle. We also have to think about precision shooters, right? Or competition shooters rather. So for PRS events, like I mentioned, very common to have courses of fire where the round count is 10 to 15 rounds or even more on unlimited stages for certain events. So looking at something like the 20-shot group is going to tell you a little bit more than looking at a 3-shot group. What this also does is it gives us some sort of measurement to determine hit probabilities at distance. So if we're long-range shooters or long-range hunters and we have a group with a, let's say, a center-to-center measurement like the 7 SAUM here that is 1.018 inches, and we extrapolate that to be equivalent at 1,000 yards, then it's roughly 10 times this. So that's roughly a 10-inch group at 1,000 yards. So we can use that to factor into our hit probability. And when we look at other things like shooter input, environmentals, and everything like that, we start to look at kind of where our limitations are, and that really comes into play with long distance hunting. So if you have a rifle out there, for example, that only shoots 2-inch groups, and you want to go out and you want to shoot an elk at 1,000 yards. So if we extrapolate 2 inches at 100 yards to 1,000 yards, that's roughly 20 inches. 20 inches is a big area, right? So the vital area on an elk is, what are we going to call it? Maybe 10 inches or so, maybe 12 inches, I guess. 20 inches is well outside of that vital range. That could mean a miss, that could mean a gut shot, that could mean shooting under, over, whatever it may be. So a really good thing to kind of think about when we're out there at the range and we have our rifle with the ammo we're planning on hunting with for the year, and we go out and shoot a group that's 1 3/4 or 2 inches. We can kind of put that in perspective as we extrapolate that to different distances and use that measurement as a guideline on how far we want to shoot and the accuracy that we need to ethically take these animals. All right, guys, so lessons learned from this. Kind of touched on it before. I thought the 6BRA was capable of a better 20-shot group than that, but that just shows that there's a lot of factors that go into shooting small groups like this, and there's some people who are better at it than others. There's other rifle setups that are better at it, like a dedicated bench rest rifle would absolutely beat the snot out of this. A lightweight 5-6 pound hunting rifle that beats you up with every shot, you're probably going to have a hard time shooting something like that, and you might be around the group size that we saw in the 7 SAUM. So what that all kind of boils down to is have what I would say realistic expectations for the accuracy on your rifle, and just because you spend top dollar for a full custom rifle build from me or from anyone else, and it comes with some sort of 3/8 accuracy guarantee or something like that, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to take that rifle, pick it up, throw a scope on it, and go out and shoot nonstop 3/8 inch groups. It typically doesn't work like that. And when people come to realize that, there's a lot of frustration because you spent all this money and you have these expectations for the rifle. But the reality of it is it just doesn't work like that. There are so many factors that go into each and every shot that you put down range that it is really, really difficult to control all those factors, including your human inputs, and produce tiny, tiny groups like this repeatedly. So there's nothing to say that you might have the occasional 3/8 inch group or the occasional 1/4 inch group or even smaller than that, But if you average all these groups out, or you shoot a larger, more statistically significant group like the 20-shot group, then you're going to see your group size increase naturally. And continuing on with lessons learned and things that I would change if I was going to do this again. I mentioned before the barrel contour on the 7 Somm proved to be difficult to continue to shoot group sizes or groups with more than 5 shots. The barrel just got too hot and I started seeing some sort of barrel deviation. And that's a dedicated hunting rifle. So for me, for that rifle, what I think I would do in that case for that type of rifle in the future is probably shoot a number or a series of 3-shot groups, allow the rifle to cool back down between each group so I minimize the barrel deflection or deviation or the effective heat on the barrel and changing the point of impact. And then I would take all of those 3-shot groups, I would average them out, I would have basically a statistic at that point. So I would have an average, I would have a extreme spread, so I would have the largest group, I would have the smallest group size, I would have the standard deviation, I would have all these statistics that would be very, very relevant as long as I had a large enough sample size. So we're talking shooting maybe, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 3-shot groups. You do that, and I feel like you would have a very significant idea or a very accurate idea of how accurate that rifle was. So I would ask you guys, and a lot of this topic today is meant to start some commentary in what your personal experience is, what your personal accuracy expectations are, what you've seen in rifles that you've purchased that have accuracy guarantees. I've got rifles back in the safe that are factory rifles that I bought that came with accuracy guarantees, and I can tell you that I never saw that accuracy guarantee met until I put a lot of effort into hand loading for the rifle and fine-tuning my reloads and making sure that I was shooting in really good conditions. So sometimes it's just like that. That's the reality of the world that we live in. Shooting is full of variables. It's full of different things that can change the output that we see on target. And we've talked about this ad nauseum in my previous videos when it comes to reloading and precision rifle building, but we try to control all the variables that we can, which is why we're as accurate as possible when we throw our powder. We're as accurate as possible when we size our cases and we set our neck tension, we set our primer depth, we set our seating depth of our bullet. We're as accurate as possible and try to rule out as many variables as we can. All right, so as we wrap this up, I'll go out and I will say that accuracy guarantees are a thing, right? They're out there, they're not going away. What that tells me is the manufacturer of that rifle is confident in their machine work. They're confident in the quality of the components they selected, and they're giving you a rifle that has the potential to shoot that accuracy. Once again, it is up to you, the shooter, to feed that rifle the best ammo possible, to shoot in the best conditions possible, to have the right mindset when you go out and you lay down behind that rifle and you shoot those groups. Make sure everything is adjusted right, distractions are limited, and you are able to produce the best groups possible. If you don't, it's okay. Things happen. We have a lot of inputs and a lot of variables like I just talked about in this game. So eliminate the variables. Be very, very self-aware of what is going on when you're pulling the trigger. If you have a bad trigger pull, if there's something you need to work on with your positional shooting, work on it and try to improve that and see how it affects your groups. If you need a new optic, if your optic needs to be adjusted, any of these things need to be changed on the rifle. Set yourself up for success so you can achieve the type of groups that your rifle is capable of. The biggest takeaway is don't get frustrated. It is frustrating when we go out there and we have a rifle that we spend several $1,000s on and we're shooting groups, at an inch, right? The rifle's capable of better than that. Are we capable of better groups on that day? Maybe, maybe not. Is the ammo we're shooting that day capable of it? Maybe, maybe not. Keep all that in mind. Don't get frustrated. Go back to the workbench, check the rifle, make sure everything is torqued properly, make sure that you are in the right mindset, make sure your ammo is good, and go out and try it again a different day. Have another shooter shoot your rifle who you know is capable of shooting small groups. Do all these things before you sit there and you throw the rifle down on the ground and you say this rifle doesn't shoot. 9 times out of 10, there's nothing wrong with the rifle, and it's usually boils down to an ammo problem or something like that, right? There's a lot of good factory ammo out there, and the problem with that though is there's generally no consistency lot to lot with this ammo. If you happen to be so lucky as to buy a full lot or a full case of some sort of ammo that shoots well through your rifle, then you're set. But if you're like most people and you go to the store and you buy a box of ammo this day and a couple weeks later you buy a box, or you have a couple boxes from a couple years ago and you have all this random ammo, even though it's the same brand, same bullet, everything, those lots are not going to shoot the same. And 9 times out of 10, one of those lots will shoot better, shoot better than everything else out there. So keep all that in mind. Don't get frustrated. Keep plugging away at it. Look at that accuracy guarantee as a guarantee from the manufacturer that they made the rifle well for you and that it has the potential to do that. But once again, it's up to you guys to put everything forth to achieve success. So I hope you guys found that was interesting. I thought it was very interesting. I've never shot 20-shot groups before. I've shot plenty of 3-shot groups, 5-shot groups, series of several groups of that size. Never sat there and actually plugged away and shot 20-shot groups, especially through a hunting rifle, where I was really trying my best to shoot the smallest groups possible. I mentioned that all this was going to segue into the next TPM challenge, and it is. We're going to have a separate episode where I go through the rules of the challenge, but I'll give you guys kind of a head start. It's going to be a 20-shot challenge. So what I would like to see is, as we're approaching the summer, during the summer we start to get prepped for the fall, for hunting season. So right about now is when a lot of people start to bust out the rifles, when the snow starts to melt and we start to get them dialed in early, or maybe you don't. But either way, this gives you an excuse to bust out your favorite hunting rifle. What I would love to see is some of you guys shooting it with these semi-custom factory rifles, like the rifles we're getting from Seekins, Christensen Arms. Those are a couple that come to mind. These rifles are really good out of the box. They're semi-custom rifles. They come with an accuracy guarantee. Shoot this 20-shot challenge and see how your rifle stacks up to that accuracy guarantee. I think you guys will find that it's a little bit frustrating and a little bit eye-opening when the groups that we'll see in that 20 shots doesn't really live up to the accuracy guarantee that we would, or our expectations from that rifle, I should say. Go ahead and do that. That's going to be the challenge, and it's going to be shot on just the standard TPM target. These are available for free download, free download on the website. Once again, per YouTube, I have to cover all this stuff, but there is no purchase necessary to enter this contest. YouTube doesn't sponsor it, has nothing to do with it. Obey all state, local, and federal laws when you're participating in the contest. And we're going to have this run until June 1st, at which that point we will transition to a new contest for the summer, and that will be largely geared toward prepping for hunting season. So get out there. You guys can have a jump start on the TPM 20-shot challenge, and basic rules for it. Just no bench rest guns. Bench rest guns are cheating for this type of contest. They will blow everything else out of the water. They're designed from the ground up for doing this exact thing. What I want to see are PRS rifles, our casual shooting rifles, our hunting rifles, stuff like that, where we're shooting off of a front bipod and a rear bag. 20 shots, do your best. Write all your info on the target. You can either scan it and email it to me, Sean@triggeredprecision.com. You can mail it to me. Mailing address is on the website. But let's see what you guys can do with this. And I am really, really curious to see what you guys get. And also, let's start some dialogue in the comments section. And I want to see your guys' experiences with accuracy guarantees on rifles, and whether or not you've ever shot something like a 20-shot group or even a 10-shot group, and what have you experienced. Really interesting stuff, guys. So I'm going to try to get some more videos out here in the near future. This week I will have the full dedicated video giving more details on the TPM 20-shot challenge, so that will be released later this week. And then we have a bunch of videos lined up to do. It's just a matter of getting the time to actually film these videos, edit them, and then post them for you guys. So I'm lacking there and I apologize, but we will get after it. I promise. It's just a matter of getting some of the work down in the shop. Until then, you guys, get to shooting, see what you can do, put your best foot forward, prepare for success, get out there, shoot tiny, tiny groups, and post your targets. Let's see what you guys can do. Thanks for watching, everyone. Get out there, shoot, and be safe, and we'll see you next time.